Pick unique page titles. And I have another slide, I think, coming up in 1 or 2 more slides. Let me just double check. Yeah. Pick unique page titles. I will show you where the page titles show up on your browser so you can sort of identify them. Get great URLs. How many of you blog? Great. This time next year, I want the whole room to raise their hand. Blogging is a great way to drive traffic to your site. 80% of our site traffic comes in through our blog. You don't have to blog a lot. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay, but blogging is great. I push a lot of content online. I syndicate articles. I blog on other people's sites. We issue press releases. Those are all great ways to get links coming into your site. Now this is, oh here. These are page titles. The top of your browser in the blue. And sometimes, surprisingly, web designers will forget to remind you that you need them. So you want to make sure, because Google searches those page titles, by the way. They do show up in searches. They do matter. Cyber schmoozing, right? This is what we talked about earlier. This is going out online and starting to talk to those communities and those people who write about what you write about, who can help you further your career. The internet is one big networking event. If you think of it in those terms, this networking will become a lot easier. And by the way, I hope that purple lavender sheet is still making the rounds. That, if it's not, please pass it through. That will get you these slides in PDF, and I'll send those out to you. Thank you so much. You are awesome. Probably tomorrow or Monday, okay? You can find additional bloggers if your Google Alerts is not, leveraging what you need it to or not giving you enough blog sites. You can also find them via Google Blog Search or Technorati. So it's pretty easy to do. Remember, everything is your resume, okay? There was, and you may have heard it, this was all the talk at the conference I just came from. There's an author who put her self-published book out to get reviewed, and I've self-published, so I have nothing against self-publishing at all, actually. But she put her self-published book out for review, and I guess she hadn't edited. She had not spent the time that she needed to editing it. And so the review wasn't all that bad, but it said, needs editing, needs some. The author got so mad. Almost 300 comments that she made on this blog. Not nice comments, by the way. And if you search any writers' communities, you'll see the link that comes up. It's kind of funny, actually, in an ironic, sort of scary, psycho kind of way.
Were there misspellings?
She had misspellings in her book.
No, I meant in the blogging bag.
Oh, you know what? I don't know. I was just so enthralled with all this crazy and she kept coming back, and I mean, cussing out the reviewer. Now, if you really, 10 easy ways to kill your career, right? I mean, good luck flipping those burgers for the rest of your life, because you're not going to be writing any books.
I'm not saying it was ironically crazy because it created a lot of good traffic for her.
Actually, no. Everybody was talking about it to the point that there is not a publisher or an agent in New York that will ever touch this girl, ever, right? So remember that everything is your resume. Now, I doubt very seriously if anybody in this room would go back and forth with the reviewer like that. I mean, maybe she thought she was being creative. I don't really know. But never put anything out there, because there's so many opportunities. And I don't know how many of you have been on Twitter or seen. I'm sometimes amazed what people will put out there. And I'm kind of like, all right. You want to remember that it can show up anywhere, anytime. On Facebook, and there's these stories, these, somewhat funny stories about the guy who calls in sick for work and then twitters from the beach. Like, hey, buddy, bring the beer or whatever. So remember that everything is your resume, because your publisher, if you're looking for a publisher, and I've had publishers tell me this, the first thing they'll do is they'll see what kind of social media presence you have. So how many people you have on Facebook and Twitter, if Twitter is appropriate to you. And they're going to look. They're going to look and see. YouTube is a great culprit for this, because we had an author who a year ago, she hired us to get her on television morning shows. And she had some videos on YouTube which were about her profession, but they weren't that good. The lighting was dark. She was not that great of a speaker. She needed more media training. So I said to her, and she had had it since then, I said, you know, the videos are kind of old and they're not very flattering. You might want to pull them down. No, I love my videos, I love my videos. Lesson number 2, do not fall in love with your work so much that you can't take constructive feedback. Because we had her nearly confirmed for the Today Show, and the producer called and said, you know those videos on YouTube? Not so much. We're going to pull in another author. They do, the media, publishers, everybody, right? So you want to be very careful with that. All right, so blogging, and I'm going to zip through this because you've got just a few more slides to go. Blogging is great. I'm going to talk at the end, hopefully there'll be time, about how you can do all of this and still have time to sleep and eat and be with your family and write a book and have a job, because it seems like there's a lot to do. Blogging is really important. It gives your website a voice. We don't have to go through all of these. I put this slide up particularly for fiction authors because blogging is very difficult a lot of times for those of us who write fiction. When you've written nonfiction, it's pretty easy, right? You know what you're going to write about. But in fiction, it's a little tougher. Now, I will tell you also that you are in a very, very unique time in publishing. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in the history of publishing a book. Ebooks and the surge of self-publishing and the successes that are following that, it's an amazing, amazing time. And if you decide that that's what you want to focus on and blog about, we have fiction authors who do that. They talk about the trends in publishing. You could become an expert in that. And getting called on by the Wall Street Journal to comment on something going on in publishing is a high quality problem to have, because obviously they're going to mention your book. So whatever you decide to focus on in your blog, again, should align with your goals and where you want to go. Pay attention to your blog post titles. I get all my blogs, my subscriptions through my iGoogle page. And when I wake up in the morning and I see this, the only thing that I see are what? The blog titles. So if you write a boring blog post title, I'm probably not going to read your blog, right? You know, 5 tips to make your readers fall in love. Oh, I want to read that. So find compelling and interesting blog post titles. Very important. Will really help to up your readership. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay. Do you like it?
Better at it.
Okay, good. Most of the time I hear people go, Twitter's kind of a mess, right? And it is, because there are a million different conversations going on, right? And you have to try and isolate and identify the conversations that matter. And for a lot of the, you know, at least the initial time that you're on Twitter, you feel kind of like you're talking to no one, right? Yeah. Like, I'm Twittering, is anybody really listening? And that's like the blogging thing. When somebody finally comments and responds back, you're like, oh, thank God. I'm not just doing this for my own, you know, just to be interesting. Best practices on Twitter: listen, learn, participate. If you decide to get on Twitter, here's why you do it. You do it because you feel that you have an audience that can be pulled in through the Twitter stream, right? Now, you can recycle a lot of your content, which I will get to before we end the presentation, which will save you a lot of time. But if you get on Twitter initially, just listen. Just subscribe to those authors that you are now networking with and see what they talk about on Twitter, right? Which will help to keep will help to keep you focused, see what they talk about.